All right. Welcome to the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster from Contractor Renovations and Custom Homes. And this is the Renovation Q&A episode. So today I'm going to chat with you a bit about those top questions people tend to ask about renovations. I'll give you some tips, some advice about how to guide you through your renovations. And we'll talk a bit about some renovation fails and maybe how to avoid those things in your own project if you take one on. So this is one of our first shows here on YouTube as the platform, which is great. We're excited about it. It enables us to share more imagery throughout the show, and we will have guests starting our next show. For today, you're stuck with me, but I will do my best to answer all those questions. And if you have questions during the show, please do comment, and I'll address them live for you here. And and we'll go from there. So if you're just tuning in, this is Art of Renovation Live, and this is the Renovation Q&A episode. So we've got about 5 questions here. Oh, make that 7 questions that came in that I think in the end are great questions that need to be addressed, because ultimately people tend to be a bit scared of the whole renovation process, and I can understand why. Whether you're a DIYer or whether you're hiring a contractor, you really need to put some thought into your project so that you're set up for a win, because it's very easy if you rush in hastily, you can end up in some trouble. So we'll start off with some of the basics here, which would be which renovations increase the value of your home. So I'm doing this here from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So my market might be different than yours. And so keep that in mind as I guide you through these things. But generally speaking, I would say that your kitchen and bathrooms are the way to go as far as renovations that will give you big bang for return on your dollar invested. And but you need to, of course, kind of plan your renovation entirely based on your neighborhood, your house. You don't want to go put $100,000 kitchen in a home that is in kind of a starter home area. You'll never get the money back out of that home. That's what you do. On the flip side, if you're in a very prominent neighborhood in a higher end house and you put in an inexpensive kitchen, some prefab thing, or it's not done well, I don't think it would really be of much help to you when you go and sell your house, because the potential buyer might just want to tear out the kitchen that you renovated. So be smart about how you choose to plan these. I'll show you some pictures here. Give me a second. So, all right. Bear with me here. Okay. So, why did I go over that screen? That's not working. Hold on a sec here. I don't know why it popped over there. Bear with me for a sec. I'm going to show you some kitchens and kind of an idea. Like, there's some pretty spaces, but to help you better understand, what a good kitchen can look like, and also maybe not such a good kitchen as well. So, okay. Bear with me. We're just getting this show going here. And I'm still playing with what's the best format for showing images, but clearly this is not it. So, I don't think you want to see me very big. Let's see if I can't show the picture very well. I guess that's about as good as we're going to get for now. I'll have to figure this out for the next show. But so your kitchen, if it presents well, ultimately that will be appealing not only to you as the user, but when it comes time to sell your house, obviously, the nicer your kitchen, the more likely it's going to add value to your home. That being said, a kitchen can be full of bells and whistles, and it's really easy for, a kitchen price to jump up depending on what you put in. So if you put in a high-end quartz or granite countertop, that's a significantly higher budget and spend than you would go on a laminate top, right? But generally speaking, nowadays, we're not putting laminate in almost anything. The occasional bathroom, perhaps, or in a laundry room. But for the most part, we're seeing lots of quartz and granite, and those products too, they can range from like $80 a square foot installed up to, $300 a square foot. So you need to be selective within the products you choose, because they can drive your kitchen price up very quickly. Same with your cabinetry, right? You could have a $5,000-$6,000 IKEA cabinet package. You could be up in the $30,000-$40,000 custom cabinet package, depending on what you pick and what you believe is important. So you'll have to just gauge for your own neighborhood as far as what makes sense for you. But generally speaking, your kitchens and bathrooms will be the ones that will show the biggest return on your investment when it comes home to your renovation, or time to with what you invest in your renovation. So after you get through kitchens and bathrooms, basement developments, people often ask, are they worth it? So they're most often worth it for you as the user to have that increased space in your home. And that's maybe great now during these COVID times to have an office space downstairs, or maybe you're have a separate developed living space down there. But I think it depends on the market. If it's a seller's market, I think typically you won't see a lot of return on your basement development. But if it's a buyer's market, or on the reverse here, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. If it's the buyer's market, I think you're probably not going to get it. But if it's a seller's market, and there's lots of people looking for houses, and you can't, and they can't find them, and there's plenty you can develop in your basement, that'll make it more attainable. And as far as getting your investment back. So window and door upgrades. Look, I guess ultimately it's one of those things where if your windows and doors are bad, you need to upgrade them. Otherwise, it'll be really tough to sell your house. So they're not a sexy thing within a renovation, but there's definitely value within replacing them. So keep that in mind. I think it's kind of same would apply for your roof and your siding. While your siding can really add a nice aesthetic appeal to your project, it's the roof that's really going to count. If you have a leaky roof, or your shingles are all weathered, you're going to have a hard time selling that house, so that somebody basically lowballing you based on the cost of the roof replacement. So make sure that things like your windows and doors, your insulation, if you have obvious issues with your insulation, then you're going to want to address that. I'll show you a couple of pictures here to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Bear with me. So if this is your house in the winter and you have all this ice damming, you have got an insulation issue, and you should address that, because you're not going to sell a house that looks like that. So ultimately, these are not attractive things to put your money into in a reno, but definitely worth every penny as far as getting your money back out of your house when you sell it. Another example here. Back to the shingle conversation. So if your roof looks, it's a terrible image, but you get the idea. If your roof is cupping like this, then you definitely need to address that before you sell the house. So there you go. That was a very long-winded ramble about which ones will give you the best return on your investment. But I think right back to the start, it's kitchens and bathrooms, and then anything else that really impacts the performance of the home as far as making it marketable and sellable, like shingles, windows and doors, siding, etc. Okay. Question number 2. So if you're just tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. This is our renovation Q&A episode. So I'm answering some questions about renovations, whether you're a DIYer or whether you're going to be hiring a contractor. This will probably be something you might have already asked yourself. So in regards to a kitchen renovation, what is the most important thing to consider in your kitchen renovation? Okay, so for me, hands down, it is your cabinet layout. If you don't properly plan your layout, your kitchen reno could be doomed. And I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but we've seen so many poorly done kitchens And it could have been avoided just by having a good plan up front, and that comes right back to your cabinets. Because if you go to open up a cabinet door and it strikes another and won't open, or you don't have enough clearance between your appliance and your island, or there's a variety of these conditions. If they exist in your reno when you're done, you will surely regret them. And I've got a great example of this. I'm gonna give me a second here. I'm gonna grab it. Pardon me. Okay. Where's this video? It's such a great one to show exactly what I was concerned about.
This bothers me a lot. I wanted to open the dishwasher to see what was in there. We can't open the dishwasher because the oven door is open. So open the oven door. You can open the dishwasher. I close those.
It gets worse.
Let me check this drawer right here. Hold up. You can't open that either. So you have to open the oven, you must open the dishwasher, and then you can open the drawer. this
All right, so there's kind of your worst case scenario as far as a poorly designed cabinet layout is concerned. There you've got an appliance that hits another appliance, you got a drawer that hits an appliance, and to get in that drawer, you need to open 2 appliances to open your drawer. So on paper, at a glance, looked fine. The drawer did fit in that opening, but then once you factor in your appliance handles and what you actually need for clearance, that turned into a disaster quickly. And you can imagine now, like, they've got a granite countertop on there, their appliances are installed, and now they're finding this problem out. That's a fairly major issue. So that goes right back to why I think your cabinet layout is the most important thing to consider in your kitchen renovation. So another quick note on that. So when you plan your cabinet layout, keep in mind, either your kitchen cabinets will dictate which appliance you can use, or on the flip side, the appliances you select will dictate the openings needed for in your cabinetry. So my advice is always to pick your appliances first, and then we design your kitchen around those appliances. But it can go the other way too. And sometimes there's a hybrid that's needed because you don't know what size of appliance will really work well. So, but I would say do the appliance legwork first, because you fall in love with something that's a must-have in your kitchen design. We want to make sure that your cabinets are designed to accommodate that. Okay. Question number 3. Low cost and high value reward on those things. So if you're just tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster from Renovations and Custom Homes. This is our renovation Q&A episode. And the question now is, what lower cost items bring high value? I would say that ultimately, if you're in your home doing a renovation and you've got walls opened up, it's relatively inexpensive at that time to upgrade your insulation. All right. So if you're doing a basement development and you're thinking about doing 2x4 walls, you might want to consider upgrading to 2x6 frost walls so that you can have a higher R20 insulation in your basement. It's not a huge cost to do that, but it will perform much better. So that's one I think would be great, especially in our climate. If you're watching down in California right now, well, then that's of no value to you. But up here in Alberta, Canada, it gets cold and insulation is worth every penny. I would say also sound insulation. So if you're developing a space, maybe your basement, upgrading to including some sound insulation in your ceiling, so within your main level floor, goes a long way, makes that place far more comfortable for use. It will reduce the amount of noise that hammers down to the basement and vice versa. So that would be my other thing. And then ultimately, a quick one that's fairly inexpensive and really can provide a nice upgrade for a fairly low cost would be upgrading your underlay below your flooring, especially carpet. So if you're putting in new carpet, consider the memory foam underpad or under cushion that can go under there. It's, I mean, relatively speaking, it'll add, $1 a square foot or so to a decent 8-pound, the cost of an 8-pound underpad. And it's such a nice, soft feeling. I think it's worth every penny. So there you go. There's my 3 low-cost, high-value upgrades when you're already planning some level of renovation. Okay. Number 4. This is kind of a loaded question. So what's the cost difference between hiring a contractor versus DIY? So if you're just tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster. This is our renovation Q&A episode. And the question now is, what's the cost difference between hiring a contractor versus DIY, which is do it yourself? So that's going to really depend on what you factor into the equation. Okay. Generally, yes, it will cost less to do it yourself, but it's far more likely to take much longer, and you have a far higher probability of making some sort of mistake along the way, which could result in some level of redo. Okay. That being said, not all contractors are awesome. So if you pick the wrong one, you might still face the same challenge. But that being said, for the most part, if you pick a professional, someone who's very qualified, it should be a lot faster. You should have no mistakes, and you should end up with getting, every bang for the dollar spent on your contractor. So all that being said, I'd say it's probably about 25% less to do it yourself versus hiring a contractor. Now, again, that's kind of a hard number to come up with, but I just look in at what I charge as a contractor. And if I factor in my profit, my overhead, and some of the logistical costs with my operation, and what that adds to the cost to the client, I would say that's around 25% more than what they would pay if they hired everybody themselves. Now, if you're doing all the work yourself, that's going to be a very different number. So I'm saying 25% based on you serving as your own general contractor. Okay. That means you're hiring your own sub-trades, you're managing them, you're dictating the order of operations, and you're doing the quality control. Okay. So things to consider, though, would also be like, as a contractor, I have far greater buying power than you will as a homeowner. Typically speaking, you might have a connection somewhere that's an exception to the rule. So because I buy things in greater volume, I'll get a better price. So generally, I'm paying 20 to 40% less than retail on the things that I'm buying. So even when my profit and overhead hit that number, it's still going to be less than retail to you. The same would apply to sub-trades. The trades that I use regularly, know that I give them a certain volume of work, will charge me at a lower rate than they would charge direct to the homeowner for doing the installation work. And I guess most of all, what I think where you're going to really see the disconnect between the cost savings for you as the homeowner versus hiring a good contractor is the likelihood for there to be mistakes. And as you may have seen in the last little video with the poorly planned kitchen, with the cabinets that hate each other, you can't open the appliances without going through a specific order of opening drawers and other doors first. That should not happen when you hire a contractor. You're paying for someone's experience, their knowledge, and their team of trades and designers and everyone that we pull together. So you should end up with a job that has no mistakes. It should go very quickly. And in the end, that I think can ultimately mean that it's not actually costing more if you do it yourself and there's errors. Those repairs could add up quickly. Okay, so what's the cost difference between DIY and hiring a contractor? Pretty tough to say, but I would guess I'd throw a dart at 25% and say that's probably a number that would be realistic with all things being equal. Okay, now number 5. What are the top tips I give my clients when planning a reno? Okay, so if you're just tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster from Contractor, Renovation and Custom Homes. This is our renovation Q&A episode. And the question now is, what are the top tips I give my clients when they're planning a reno? All right, so I guess ultimately what I've learned in my years in the industry here doing the work that we do is a good designer goes a long way in making sure that you have a great end result. So work with a designer, whether it's just to help with your selections, whether it's the overall color scheme. The main thing is you want to make sure that everything ties together well. And at the end of the reno, if you're only doing one space within a home, it doesn't stand out as, oh, well, that room's obviously renovated and the rest aren't. There are different styles, different designs, different eras. That can be kind of a deal breaker as far as getting that end result that you want out of your reno. So a good designer will help take a look at your home and figure out, look, how can we blend this new bathroom's design in with the look of the rest of the home if the rest of it is not being renovated soon. Okay, if you're planning a large reno that's going to be done in stages over a few years, it's really, really critical that you do the overall design first, and then you phase it out so that you make sure that at the end of those few years of doing your projects, it has this cohesive look, and you don't get stuck with some sore spots at the end that just jump out as not fitting into the overall aesthetic. Okay, so that would be the first tip I give my clients. Second would be make sure you finalize your plan, all your specifications before you start any work. Too often we're asked to go to contract quickly without having a plan complete, and that's really a risk for you as the homeowner, because then you're at risk of the project cost changing without you really understanding what the end price will be, because there's so many unconfirmed items. And also then it's easy to steer off track and run into delays as well on actual production and getting through the reno. So always finalize your plan and your specifications before you start. That's really an integral part of getting to contract for us, because then once we start, we know everything that's spec'd, we know what we need, we can make our plan and our timeline for the project, and we can just get at it and not run into delays along the way. I guess lastly, my advice would be very clear about your must-haves and your like-to-haves, because it's really easy to start thinking about a renovation and going, oh, it'd be nice to have this and be great to have this. And before you know it, you've added all these items into the scope or spec, and now perhaps your budget has ballooned through the roof and you can't afford or aren't willing to pay for that total project. So for us, we always ask up front, what are your must-have items for your reno? What are your nice-to-have items that we'll put in if budget allows? And you dictate the budget. We always try to work backwards from a client's budget. But I think that if you aren't clear about what you want versus what you need, then it makes it much harder to actually put together a proposal that's going to serve you well within a comfort zone for budget spending. So those are my tips for anybody who's planning a reno. Okay. Pardon me. So number 6, how do you find a good contractor? Okay, so this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster from Contact Renovation to Custom Homes. This is a renovation Q&A episode, and our question now is, how do you find a good contractor? Okay, so I'm biased. I'm a good contractor. And how do you find me? Well, I'm not going to talk about finding me, because if you're watching, I guess you've already found me. I would say, first of all, go out there and talk to your trusted network, whether that be your friends, your family, your coworkers, people who you trust their judgment, and ask them about who did work for them and find out what their story is. In my opinion, a referral is always best. At least then you have something that's kind of been qualified and quantified in regards to how the experience went for that person that you trust. And they're a third party. They aren't trying to sell anybody's service to you. They're going to give you the honest breakdown as far as how the process went. And that would be a good way to get at least a short list of contractors that you want to interview. In this day and age, you should have access to, company profiles and reviews and ratings, all that type of stuff. So look them up and check into that stuff. And reviews are fantastic, but you need to also look at the reviews carefully and determine whether they're real or not, because it's very easy for companies to make up kind of fake looking profiles and ask a bunch of people they know to make reviews for them. And I think in the end, it's really important that you're reading reviews that you can see ultimately are real and from past clients, right? So that would be something to make sure you check into, would be check the reviews, but be diligent about making sure that they're real. And how can you do that? You can ask that contractor if they can speak to the client that left that review. Can you see project photos from that reviewed person's, the reviewer, project photos from their project, right? Because that will then show you that is a legitimate review for an actual project. Okay, references. So here we go. Definitely ask for references from each contractor and follow up. And again, be specific about the questions you're going to ask that reference, right? When did they do the reno? What type of project was it? How did it go? And be specific. Not how did it go? It's, were there delays? Were there challenges? How did they handle them? What did you love about it? What didn't you like about it? Because there's some things that didn't go well that might still show you that it's a good contractor. We make mistakes every now and then, and we always clean up our messes, right? So if you talk to a client of ours that ever said that there was an issue that came up, I think they would be very happy to tell you that it was resolved well, and that's a sign of a good contractor. Then lastly, I kind of already alluded to this, but check out the company's portfolio. Just double check that they've been around for a while, how long they've been in business for. Are they a part of something like the BBB, the Better Business Bureau? Do they have associations with, different brands or other things that kind of reinforce the fact that they're a good contractor? Like for us, for example, we're a Baumler approved company, so they've gone through and vetted us to say, yeah, these guys are good, they're trustworthy, they do great work. Check for awards that they've won, right? And in general, just be diligent about ensuring that they're on the up and up. All right. So that would be how you find a good contractor. Okay, question number 7. Where should you start if you're thinking about a home reno? All right, so if you're just tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster from Contractor, Renovation, and Custom Homes. And our question is, where should you start if you're thinking about a home reno? So I've kind of already alluded to this earlier in a past question, but I would say that, really what's key is your wants versus your needs, right? And that would apply versus your layout. So, you need a new bathroom. Do you need to have a separate soaker tub and a walk-in shower? Or could you live with the tub shower combo, right? And figure that out. Do you need to have those two fixtures separately or not? That's just an example, right? But go through the whole idea of what your renovation is going to be about and figure out what you really need to have and what would be nice to have. And that's key. And then you can get into all of the options that you'd like. So if you're talking about your bathroom still, do you want a heated tile floor? Do you want a bench in the shower? Do you want body sprays in the shower? Do you want a handheld? Do you want toe kick lighting under the vanity on a motion switch? So if you walk in at night, the light turns on, subtle lighting down by your feet. You're not turning on 200 watts of bulb in the middle of the night. So those are some features you can consider. And again, break it out into your wants versus your needs. Next thing would be idea book. So when you're thinking about your reno, you should do a bunch of research. And idea books are great to figure out what style and aesthetic are you, I guess, matches yours. And also what's really key is making sure your partner, or if you have someone you live with that you're doing this renovation together, or you live in the home together, you both should be looking at your idea book. I guess I would almost suggest individually, and you compare notes after to see, do you have the same style? Do you have the same things you're interested in? What if, one person's picking all light color cabinets, the other wants dark cabinets? Well, now, maybe you need a hybrid where you have a mixture of both in the kitchen, right? So idea books are great. And also they're a great starting point then to help out the designer for understanding where to go in regards to design. What is your style? What is the look of things that you like? Have you been consistently adding to your idea book with kitchens with, dark countertops and light cabinets? That seem to be a trend within your idea books. And we'll know that tends to be what you're leaning towards. So that helps with the start of the design process. Okay. And then lastly, again, this ties back into the last question, is do your research on good contractors in your area. I mean, that's key. A reno is only as good as the execution. Well, that's not true. I mean, the plan is key, but if you don't have the right person doing the work, you could have a mediocre end result, and that would be heartbreaking and incredibly frustrating. So, know what you want versus you need. Really figure out the look you're after so we can get into a good design and establish a great plan. And then lastly, make sure you get a great contractor who can deliver as planned. Okay. I got the last question here about hidden costs. Okay, so if you're just tuning in, this is the Art of Renovation Live. I'm your host, Paul Foster from Contractor, Renovation, and Custom Homes. This is a renovation Q&A episode. And this question is, what are some hidden costs in a renovation that you should know about? Okay, so in my opinion, there really shouldn't be any hidden costs that should come up. These should be addressed early. So how do I do that with my clients? We talk about contingency funds. You need to have a contingency for every renovation that you plan, because there will be some surprise along the way. You might as well plan on it. So typically I would say you need at least 10% as a contingency, or if you're in an older home or a home that shows signs of a lot of DIY work, then I would say you should bump that contingency up to 20%, sometimes more. Now, your contractor should be really upfront with you about, hey, look, you're in an older home, the type of reconfiguration we're doing for your layouts, likely in removing walls, and we're opening up surfaces where we can't see behind currently. They should be able to give you an idea where we expect to find the surprises. So a contingency is critical, all right? So now there's different ways, I suppose, people can hide costs up front and present them as change orders later. I don't typically play that game. I like to be very upfront about what I expect costs will be, and I'll tend to include things that maybe aren't known to be needed, but are suspected to be likely needed. And then that's outlined in the contract. And then if it comes to that point and they aren't needed, then we credit back the amount that was included to cover that. That's how I operate, but it does drive my price up front, in the front end of it all. But I believe that at the tail end of it, my number is far more accurate based on reality, because I include the things we suspect will be required. Okay, so if you're doing a new configuration of your kitchen, and I know here in Edmonton, code is on our backsplash plugs, we need to have 20 amp backsplash receptacles, and that's not how it was roughed in until recently. The codes changed. So we know if you're going to open up your backsplash, or we're going to reconfigure your kitchen, we need to pull new circuits for your backsplash plugs. So those should be included up front. I suppose somebody could not bring it up and then, present it later as a change order item. So those would be the kind of things to be aware of, and it's tough. If you don't know a lot about the industry and what code requires, then it'd be tough for you to know that without having a good contractor who's really transparent about it. So let's see, what else would be things that we don't talk about that we do bill for, but for us, it's always included in the price, but it's things like site cleaning, right? I include in my projects 15 minutes a day for the duration of the project to tidy up the site at the end of the day. And that way we know that site looks clean, it's safe. I mean, we tidy up during the day too, but at the end of each workday, someone's dedicated role is to go through there and tidy up the site. Right, so that's a cost that might not be known that it's part of the number, but it definitely should be in there. If you ask your contractor and they haven't included cleaning, well, you can expect that you're going to have a pretty messy site. So I think it makes good sense to include it. What else? Trade supervision. So in our projects, we always have a dedicated person whose responsibility is to supervise the sub-trades that are doing work on the project to make sure they're adhering to spec. They're doing things in a safe manner that's compliant with our operating, procedure, as far as making sure they have everything from the right proper PPE. They're using the right entrance. They're not, damaging adjacent workspace or adjacent spaces in the home that aren't part of the workflow. Things like that. Managing the subtrades is a key part. And for us, like on our average, let's say a basement development, we typically have about 30 supervisory hours that go into just liaising with the subtrades. And it's a really important part, because that way you are far more likely to have a success at the end and make sure that you don't have a subtrade that's gone off in their own direction and not adhered with spec. And we see a lot of it, especially in some of the new build world. When the last house that we built for a client, I think we had something like 300 supervisory hours in on supervising the trades. And, even with good sub-trades, we caught a bunch of stuff that would have really created problems later on if we hadn't caught it at that rough-in stage. So you can imagine all these houses that are flying up and you don't see a site super vehicle on site. Nobody's checking the trades. You can imagine, the challenges that could come out from that. So I'm going to show some renovation gone wrong images in a bit here, and you'll get a better idea what I'm talking about. Let's see here. What else could be a hidden cost? Well, it's easy to omit permit fees and permit processing, so make sure those are included if someone's quoting you some work. What about the cost of the permit, and are they going to fill out and submit the application on your behalf? Do they have all the plans and drawings prepared as needed for the permit as well? So make sure those are included. And I would say lastly, the one to make sure that you've addressed this early on. If you're in a home that's between depends where you live, but let's say between the 1930s until the mid 1980s, and you're planning to remove any drywall or plaster, any insulation, any vinyl floor product, any ceiling texture, you need to test for asbestos, because that's something that is certainly possible to be present. And if we find it and you need to go through the abatement process, that can add tens of thousands of dollars to the cost of your project very quickly. So you need to know that up front. So one of our our requirements is any house that fits within that time period for age of home, we won't do anything without an asbestos test. And we do it in the design stage to make sure that we can factor that cost in, the abatement cost, into the project for the client. Because if they need to spend $10,000 on abatement now, you'd want to know that up front when you're determining your scope and your spec, and not, oh, surprise, later, it's demo day, you're about to start. Last minute, they do a test, and surprise, now potentially have a $10,000 price tag on top of your contract price, right? So that would be very much an important thing to test up front. Okay, so there you go. Those are the questions I have for now. I don't see any questions that have come in here in the comment feed. So if you watch this after it's posted and no longer live, you can still comment on the episode, and I will get back to you in the comment or reach out to you to answer your question. Okay. So let's, I'm going to show you some pictures now. This is kind of just some fun and games part of the show here for me. I want to show you some things that have gone wrong. So bear with me as I'm still figuring out how to show images here in a way that isn't too terribly clunky, but okay, here we go. So this is some renovation fail images we're going to go through here. So, all right, this this bathroom, you've got a toilet that appears to be in the shower or right beside what's going to be maybe the future corner shower location. You have a big long water line coming out the wall beside it, and then if you look at the P-trap that runs into that sink, boy, that was not designed for a pedestal. Anyways, that's a pretty ugly install. All right, find you another one here. Here's what we talked about earlier. Let's see if I can get this picture any bigger. Here we go. All right. So here's the classic, oops, my drawer hits the other one's handle, right? So this goes back to a good cabinet plan. And this is something that just because the drawer fronts clear each other, you can't forget the handles are going to go on sale too, right? So this right there kind of iterates the importance of a good cabinet plan of somebody who knows what they're doing. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, this one kind of stumps me as to how this even happened. So here we got a cabinet that is somehow buried in a wall. I have to think this is not actually real. Please tell me this didn't actually happen to someone. If it did, how did it ever get this far? Right? You would have thought that the person assembling and installing the cabinets would have said something along the way. Like maybe we need to get a different drawer bank unit. Anyways, no idea. Crazy things out there, I can tell you. One of my favorites is lighting fails. So it's really something to consider when you're planning your reno is how you're going to light your space, and be careful of a couple of things. And this is kind of more, I'll show you this one here, bear with me. So this one, you have this nice ceiling detail, but they didn't want the light in the middle of it, I guess. Perhaps the table's underneath it. So that's a challenge for sure. You might want to reconsider the size of your table and maybe its position, because this looks pretty rough. All right, what else we got here? Yeah, these, I'm not a huge fan of the big long chain to help relocate your lighting fixture. I would say that in this one, the ceiling looks to be a flat finished drywalled ceiling. That's not too big of a deal to move that light box, depending which way the floor joists run, of course. But anyhow, that's something to watch out for. Not a big fan of that. Should have been a better planned lighting layout. Let's see here. Here's kind of a classic that I always think is funny. I hope you bear with me in the sense of humor, but you got to think about the shadows that your lights will cast. This one, that's a doozy. I mean, unless this is what you're looking for, maybe that's the look you want in your house. Odds are it's not. So, in design, you should be factoring that in to your decision as far as what light fixture you're going to use, how that shadow will cast in your home. And hey, who knows, maybe it'll entertain your guests, but odds are it might be more irritating than anything. Okay. Here's another one that's puzzling. We've got the basketball hoop directly over the exterior light. I can't see that light lasting very long. Again, I guess it would come down to having a good plan, thinking things through. Okay, bear with me here. Let's talk about tile for a second. So we did a show a while back called The Art of Tile Setting with Aaron Brown from the River City Tile Company. We talked a lot about the importance of a quality install when it comes to tile. And here's just another great example of, this is called lippage or cupping. Again, this is not well installed. If this is what you have in your home, you will be surely dissatisfied with it. Make sure you have a professional tile setter. And tile is one of those things where it's not really regulated, so anybody can lay tile. There are some training, there's some training available, but it's not a requirement. It's kind of an optional thing that you can choose to take just because you want to be the best installer that you can, but not everyone has to do it. So, do your homework on who's installing your tile. Okay, here's another example of it again. Again, this is a subway tile. If you see the lippage on these things, and it makes it hard to clean. It casts a bad shadow. It just generally does not look nice. Especially with this tile is not intended to be. It's not like a handmade, classic tile that's intended to have this look. This is a product that was just poorly installed. And generally, you wouldn't use a 50-50 offset on a tile that has a lot of cupping. Okay, last couple here. We'll go back into some plumbing stuff. Again, not quite too sure what someone thought who is having a shower in this tub shower, but you can see that this shower head was not well thought through, unless that one's for cleaning your knees. I don't know. All right. What do we have? This is a good one. Here you go. Maybe should have considered the location of the toilet in relation to the door and how it's going to swing. So I give them points for being creative and finding a solution. You notched out the door to fit around the toilet. Needless to say, that's going to be a tough water closet to get into. Imagine having to climb in around that toilet to get in and out through that door. So again, it just, to me, shows the importance of a good plan and thinking things through in advance. Yeah. All right. What do we got here? Here's another one. Think about your fixtures. So in this case, we've got this faucet that the reach on the spout isn't long enough to clear into the sink. So the water just leaks onto the countertop. So, I mean, this is something that should have been caught early, but again, just shows you the importance of going through that specifications process to make sure that everything you select is going to work within the design. In this case, you've got undermount sink in what looks to be a granite countertop. For some reason, they drilled the hole way back, and that was probably intended to be used with a different faucet entirely. So maybe the plumber put the wrong faucet on in the wrong washroom, who knows? I'd like to think that this was more intended to be a joke than a real installation issue, but who knows? Anyhow, there you go. We covered a bunch of stuff today. I hope that it was helpful. I don't see any questions that have come in here. So lots of stuff to think about when you're planning your reno. I would say that, obviously finding a good contractor is key, but I think it starts before the contractor is even involved. If knowing what you want, knowing what you need, really defining the scope of your project as far as what you want to see done within your home. And you really need to understand what is your comfort zone for your spend on your project. Everyone's got a limit. Every house can only take a certain amount as far as what you invest and expect to get returned when it comes time to sale. And if you're thinking, you're in the house for 20 years, then I guess that's not such a big consideration for you. But if you're thinking it's a 5-year home for you, you really need to think about whether you're going to get your money back on your rental later. So I would say, here, I'll recap what we went through today, and that way you kind of have something to look back on if you're considering a renovation. So question number 1, which renovations increase the value of your home the most? Kitchens and bathrooms would be the top 2 there for sure. Question number 2, what's the most important thing to consider in your kitchen renovation? Your cabinet layout. It's key. That can destroy a kitchen if not done well. You gotta make sure you have good clearance between your island and your appliance, and that all your doors and drawers can open properly, that it's efficiently planned out for storage. That's key. Question number 3, what were some low-cost, high-value upgrades in a reno? I would say upgrading your insulation when you're already in those walls doing work. I would say upgrade your underlay under your flooring, and adding some sound insulation. Those are 3 relatively inexpensive things you can do that have a major impact on performance within those areas. Number 4, what's the cost difference between hiring a contractor versus going DIY? That's a tough one to answer. I'm going to throw a dart at it and say that about 25%, assuming that everything went well for the DIYer and there were no mistakes made and no redo had to be done as far as the work that was completed. But generally speaking, I think that a really good contractor will be fast, will be efficient, and will also get really good pricing. So in the end, I think ultimately you probably would save less doing it yourself, unless you're really experienced and can do a lot of the trade work yourself. Question number 5, what are the top tips I give my clients when planning a reno? I would say know what you want and what you need. Those are 2 different things entirely. Work with a designer. We always bring a designer into our projects just to make sure everything's going to be cohesive and that it really does represent what you want ultimately within the style and the aesthetic of the work that's being completed. And make sure you have your plan and your specifications finalized before you start. You don't want to be figuring out what products are being installed after you're already in contract and work's begun. That's just a recipe for disaster. So make sure that's all laid out well in advance. Question number 6, how do you find a good contractor? I would say just talk to your trusted network of friends, family, coworkers. A referral is a great way to get to know who's out there, and then from there you can start to shortlist contractors based on who you think is the right fit for you. There's lots of good contractors out there. We all have different ways, different processes that we approach things. I'm a collaborative contractor. I like to be highly engaged with the client. That feels good for me and usually keeps the client happy along the way because they know what's happening. But not everybody wants a contractor like that. So if you want someone who just, you know what you want, do your research. But I would say start with a referral if you can. If you have nobody who can refer to you, then you want to go into looking at reviews, checking out portfolios and company profiles. But most of all, check your references and do your due diligence, making sure that that company is legit, and try to speak to some of their past clients if you can. Okay. Question number 7. Where should you start if you're thinking about a reno? That's very similar to question number 5, I suppose, but make sure you know your wants and needs. Put together your idea book so that you can identify what you like, what look you love, what you want out of your space, and what might inspire you. Go looking for images and collect those, and you can share them with your contractor, your designer, most of all your spouse if you're living in a home with someone, to make sure that you're on the same page. You might have different tastes. This is a good way to kind of curb that issue early, and then figure out what you would agree on as far as the style and aesthetic would go. And then make sure you do your research on your contractors, fact check them, and make sure that everything's on the up and up. And number 8, what are some of the hidden costs that might pop up in a renovation? Well, you'll need a contingency fund that should be included right up front, because there will be some sort of surprise, I'm sure, along the way. I would say it's very rare that we get through any project without something coming up, whether we find some pre-existing site condition that we couldn't see until we got through demo, whether the client requested a change along the way, or whether we suggested something that might improve the overall performance or layout of the home, right? So I would say factor in a contingency so that you're covered there. Never go to contract on your full budget. You should always have something in your back pocket in case something comes up. Test for asbestos. That's a terrible surprise to find out later in the game. So if you're taking out walls, floor, insulation, or texture, and you're in a home from between 1940 to the mid 1980s, then you want to make sure you have an asbestos test done early in the process. Make sure your site cleaning is included from your contractor, garbage disposal, trade supervision, and all the permit fees and the permit application costs are included in your project. Those would be my kind of 5 or 6 things to look out for as far as what could be hidden in the cost of the renovation. Any good contractor will be very transparent about these things, and will lay out what's included and what might not be included. But on our end, we always include what we suspect will be needed, and if it's not, then that's credited back, as opposed to omitting it and then charging change orders for it later, right? Anyhow, so there you go. That's the renovation Q&A show. It's been great chatting with you. Please do follow, like, and comment. With episode 32 for us, maybe it's 33, and we have some great shows coming up, a new lineup of guests coming to help share their stories about renovations and insight into the process and things that can help you guys avoid stepping on landmines when you're planning your reno, and making sure, if there's red flags, to look for what those might be. All right. So as always, if you have any questions, please comment. You can reach out to us here at the office. I'm happy to chat with you. I love what I do, and I'm happy to share my knowledge with you. I'm the host, Paul Foster from Contact Renovation and Custom Homes. This has been the Art of Renovation Live. We'll be back in 2 weeks on June 1st, I believe. And we will see you then. In the meantime, take care. Bye-bye.